For 3 years, Alina kept the porch light on every single night. Without fail, she walked to the front door before going to bed and flipped the small switch beside the frame. The warm yellow light would glow over the quiet street, spilling softly across the wooden steps and the small garden beside the porch. Most people in the neighborhood stopped noticing it after a while. But for Alina, that light meant something very important. It meant hope. It meant that if Daniel ever came back, he would see the house waiting for him. Daniel had not disappeared after an argument or a dramatic goodbye. Their last day together had been simple and ordinary. They had breakfast together that morning. Daniel made pancakes. Even though he always burned the first one, Lena laughed at him while he tried to flip it too early. "Someday I'll master this," he said proudly. "You've been saying that for 4 years, she teased. He only smiled and kissed her forehead. That was the last moment Alina remembered clearly. Later that afternoon, Tina left the house to run a few errands. He said he would be back before dinner. Alina stayed home, finishing some work on her laptop and cleaning the living room when evening arrived. She texted him, "Did you get stuck in traffic?" No answer. An hour passed. Then another. By midnight, Alina felt a small knot of worry in her chest. She called him. His phone was off. At first, she thought maybe his battery had died. Daniel sometimes forgot to charge his phone. But when morning came and he still hadn't returned, Alina's worry turned into fear. She called his friends. No one had seen him. She called his workplace. He had not shown up. That afternoon, Alina drove across town searching for him. She visited places he often liked to go, the coffee shop near the park, the gym, even the bookstore where he sometimes spent hours reading. Nothing by evening. Her hands were shaking as she walked into the police station. They took a report and promised to investigate for the next few weeks. Alina lived inside a storm of fear and confusion. Police asked many questions. Friends came over to comfort her. Family members suggested different possibilities. Maybe Daniel had an accident. Maybe he left town suddenly. Maybe something else had happened. But none of the answers made sense. Daniel had not taken his clothes. His passport was still in the bedroom drawer. His car was found parked near a grocery store across town. Everything about his disappearance felt strange. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. The police investigation slowly lost momentum. There were no clear leads, no witnesses, no messages. Eventually, the calls from detectives became less frequent. The world began moving forward again, but Alina could not. At first, she refused to believe he was gone. Every sound outside made her run to the window. Every phone notification made her heart jump. Sometimes she imagined the front door opening suddenly. Daniel stepping inside with a tired smile and a long explanation. But that moment never came. One evening, about a month after Daniel disappeared, Alina stood on the porch staring at the dark street. The neighborhood was quiet, Its cold wind moved through the trees, and suddenly she had a thought. What if he comes home at night and can't see the house? The idea felt silly for a moment, but it also felt important. So she reached beside the door and turned on the porch light. The warm glow spread across the front yard. From that night on, Alina never turned it off. At first, her friends supported her. They visited often, bringing food and sitting with her in the evenings. Her best friend Maya tried to keep her busy. "Come out with us tonight," Maya said one Friday. "I don't feel like going out. You can't stay inside forever." Alina forced a small smile. "I just want to be here, in case he comes back." Maya sighed quietly, but didn't argue. Months passed. Slowly. People stopped talking about Daniel as often. It wasn't because they didn't care, it was because no one knew what else to say. But Alina continued living in the same quiet routine. She woke up, went to work, returned home, cooked dinner, and waited. Every night before bed, she turned on the porch light. At first it felt comforting, like she was keeping a door open for someone she loved. But as time moved forward, the waiting became heavier. The house felt different without Daniel. It was too quiet. He used to fill every room with energy. Kay sang badly while cooking. He played music while cleaning. Kay laughed loudly at movies. Now the rooms felt still. Sometimes Alina walked through the house touching small things that reminded her of him. His favorite mug, a jacket he forgot to take, the old guitar he rarely played but refused to throw away. These objects felt like small pieces of him. Left behind, the first anniversary of his disappearance was the hardest day. Alina sat alone on the porch that evening. She watched the sunset slowly disappear behind the houses across the street. Her phone stayed silent. Her chest felt heavy. A whole year had passed. Still no answers. Still no Daniel. That night she cried for the first time in months. After that, something inside her changed slightly. She stopped expecting him every day, but she still waited time, kept moving. 2 years passed. Friends began encouraging her to move forward. "You deserve happiness," Maya told her gently. "Maybe," Alina said. "Then why are you still waiting?" Alina didn't know how to explain it. Waiting had become part of her life. It was the last connection she had to Daniel. Letting go felt like losing him forever. But even she could feel that the waiting was slowly draining her. Energy, she stopped going out as much. She stopped making new plans. Her life became smaller. One quiet autumn evening, Alina returned home from work and noticed something unusual. The porch light was already on. She frowned for a moment, before remembering that she had left it on the previous night. It had been glowing all day. She stood there looking at it for a long time. The light looked simple, just a small, yellow bulb above the door. But suddenly, Alina realized how much meaning she had placed on it. That light represented 3 years of hope, 3 years of questions, 3 years of standing still while the world moved forward. She walked inside the house slowly. The living room looked the same as always, the same couch, the same pictures on the wall, the same quiet. Alina walked to the hallway mirror and stopped. Her reflection looked different. Her eyes seemed tired, not physically tired, emotionally tired. Waiting had slowly taken pieces of her life away. 3 years of birthdays, 3 years of opportunities, 3 years of moments she never allowed herself to enjoy fully, all because she believed Daniel might return. She wasn't angry with him, she still loved him, but something inside her finally whispered a truth she had avoided. What if he isn't coming back? The thought felt painful, but it also felt honest. Alina walked back to the front door. The porch light still shined through the window. For 3 years, it had been a symbol of hope, but now it felt like something else, a chain, a reminder that she had stopped living. Her hand hovered over the light switch. Her heart beat faster. Turning it off felt like a final goodbye. She closed her eyes for a moment. Then she whispered softly into the quiet house, "I'm done waiting for a ghost." And slowly, she flipped the switch. Outside, the porch light went dark for the first time in 3 years. The street looked exactly the same. Nothing dramatic happened, but inside Alina's heart, something shifted. A door had closed and another one quietly began to open. She didn't know it yet, but only a few days later, a simple walk through town would lead her to a small bookstore. And inside that bookstore, she would meet someone who would change the direction of her life completely. 3 days after Alina turned off the porch light, the house felt different. Not sad, not heavy, just quiet in a new way. For the first time in years, she woke up without immediately checking her phone. She didn't look at the front door expecting it to open. She didn't pause in the hallway listening for footsteps that would never come. Instead, she made coffee and sat by the window. The morning sun filled the living room. Outside, a few neighbors were walking their dogs. Cars passed slowly down the street. Life continued just as it always had. Alina watched it quietly. For years, she had felt frozen in time. But now she noticed something strange. The world hadn't been waiting with her. It had been moving forward all along, and maybe it was time for her to move forward too. That afternoon, Alina decided to do something simple. She left the house just to walk. No errands. No purpose, just walking. The air was cool and fresh. Autumn had arrived fully, and the trees along the street were turning shades of orange and red. Leaves crunched softly beneath her shoes as she walked out. At first it felt strange being outside without a destination for so long. Every movement in her life had been routine: work, home, waiting. But now each step felt slightly different. Free, she walked through the small downtown area where people gathered. A coffee shop played soft music through open windows. A bakery released the smell of warm bread into the street. Alina realized she hadn't visited this part of town in a long time. Her feet eventually carried her to a quiet bookstore on the corner. The wooden sign above the door read Oaken Page. Books. Daniel used to bring her there sometimes. They would sit in the reading corner for hours, each lost in a different story. For a moment, Alina hesitated, but then she pushed the door open. Ah! Small bell rang softly as she entered. The smell of paper and old wood instantly surrounded her. The shop was peaceful, with tall shelves filled with books of every kind. A few people wandered quietly between the rows. Alina walked slowly through the store, running her fingers across the spines of the books. It felt comforting to be there again. She stopped in front of a shelf filled with novels and reached for one with a deep blue cover. At the same moment, another hand reached for the same book. Their fingers touched lightly. "Oh, sorry," a man said quickly. Alina looked up. The man standing beside her looked to be in his early 30s. He had dark hair that was slightly messy and warm brown, eyes that seemed kind. He smiled awkwardly. "I guess we both picked the same book," he said. Alina laughed softly. "I guess we did." He pulled his hand back. "You can take it." "It's okay. You saw it first." They both paused for a moment, unsure what to do. Finally, the man chuckled. "This might be the longest book decision in history." Alina smiled again. "I think we're both overthinking it." Picked up the book and handed it to her. "Here, you can read it first." She accepted it, slightly surprised. "Thank you." Marcus. By the way, Alina stood there for a moment longer, and somehow the conversation continued naturally. Marcus asked what kind of books she liked. Alina asked if he visited the bookstore often. "I come here whenever work gets stressful," Marcus said. "Books are quieter than people." "That makes sense," Alina replied. "What about you?" "I used to come here a lot," she said softly. "Used to." Alina hesitated slightly. "Life got busy." Marcus nodded, understanding more than she expected. "Well, I'm glad you came today." They talked for nearly half an hour without realizing how much time had passed. The conversation flowed easily. Marcus had a relaxed way of speaking that made things feel simple. Eventually, Marcus checked his watch and looked surprised. "I didn't realize how long we've been talking." Alina looked at the clock on the wall. "Neither did I." He rubbed the back of his neck, looking a little nervous. "Would it be strange if I asked you to grab coffee sometime?" The question caught Alina off guard. Dating again had never crossed her mind. For 3 years, her heart had been locked in the past, but Marcus didn't seem pushy or intense. He simply looked hopeful. Alina thought for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. "Coffee sounds nice." Akash smiled, clearly relieved. "There is a cafe down the street that makes great coffee. Tomorrow afternoon," he suggested. Alina agreed. The next day, she found herself sitting at a small table inside the cafe. Marcus mentioned. The smell of roasted coffee beans filled the air. Soft music played in the background. Marcus arrived a few minutes later carrying 2 cups. "I guessed you might like a latte," he said. "You guessed right." They talked again for a long time. Marcus worked as a graphic designer for a small company in town. He had moved there 2 years earlier after leaving a busy city job. "I wanted a slower life," he explained. "What about you?" he asked. Alina hesitated. Her past wasn't something she shared easily, but something about Marcus made honesty feel safe. I used to live a normal life, she said slowly. But someone important to me disappeared. Marcus didn't interrupt. He simply listened. 3 years ago, she continued. My boyfriend left one day and never came back. Marcus's expression softened. I'm sorry. No one knows what happened, Alina said. For a long time, I waited for him. Do you still? Alina thought carefully. Images of the dark porch light appeared in her mind. Then she shook her head. No, she said quietly. I think I'm finally learning how to stop. Marcus nodded gently. That takes courage. Their conversation shifted after that. They talked about movies, music, and small dreams for the future. Marcus told funny stories about his childhood. Alina found herself laughing more than she had in years. When the afternoon ended, Marcus walked her outside. I had a really good time, he said. Me too. Would you like to do it again sometime? Alina nodded, and just like that, something new began growing slowly in her life. Over the next few weeks, they saw each other often, sometimes. They walked through the park, sometimes they tried new restaurants. Sometimes they simply sat and talked for hours. Marcus never rushed anything. He never pushed her for answers. But slowly Alina felt something warm returning to her heart. It wasn't the intense excitement she once felt with Daniel. This felt calmer, more peaceful. One evening, Marcus walked her home after dinner. They stopped in front of her house. The porch light above them remained dark. Marcus glanced at it. You don't use your porch light? Alina smiled faintly. I used to. Marcus didn't ask more questions. Instead, he looked at her kindly. You seem stronger than most people I know, he said. Alina felt her cheeks warm. For a moment, they stood quietly together. Marcus looked like he might lean in to kiss her, but he stopped himself. Good night, Alina, he said gently. Good night. She watched him walk down the street before going inside. Her heart felt light in a way she hadn't felt in years, for the first time since Daniel disappeared. The future didn't look empty, but the past wasn't finished with her yet. The very next morning, Alina opened the front door to pick up the newspaper, and something unusual caught her. A small envelope sat on the porch. Floor. She frowned. No stamp, no mailing. Address. Someone had placed it there by hand. Her heart began beating faster. Slowly she bent down and picked it up. The handwriting on the front made her freeze completely, because written across the envelope were two words she recognized instantly. Her name, written in Daniel's handwriting. Alina held the envelope in her hands for a long moment, staring at the familiar handwriting. 3 years. 3 years of unanswered questions, quiet nights, and heavy waiting. And now, here it was. Daniel's writing. She felt her chest tighten, a strange mix of hope, fear, and disbelief squeezing her heart all at once. She sat down on the porch steps, her fingers trembling slightly as she carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper. The words on it were unmistakable Daniel's handwriting, the way she remembered, precise yet slightly hurried. She unfolded it slowly, her eyes scanning the first line. Alina, it began, and she felt a pang in her chest. The sound of her own name in his handwriting bringing memories rushing back. If you are reading this, it means I finally found the courage to reach out. Her fingers gripped the paper tighter. She remembered the mornings he had left notes on the fridge, small messages full of love, jokes, and encouragement. That familiar feeling returned, a bittersweet ache she hadn't felt in years. She read on. Daniel explained everything. He had disappeared not because he wanted to leave her or because he had fallen out of love. No, it was something far heavier, something he had carried in silence. He had been diagnosed with a rare illness, a condition that required immediate treatment in another city. And he had been terrified of how Alina would react. He had thought that leaving quietly would protect her, that she would be safe and wouldn't have to watch him suffer. But as the days passed, guilt had gnawed at him. Every morning without her, every empty house he had imagined her living in, had eaten at him slowly. He hadn't known how to return, not after so long. Elena's chest ached as she read. She understood the fear, the isolation, the choice he had made. And yet, the pain of those 3 years of waiting, of imagining the worst, of trying to move on, but never fully letting go, hit her all at once. At the bottom of the letter, Daniel had written something that made her breath catch. "If you still love me, I'll be at the lake tonight." The same place where we first met. Elena's heart raced. The lake. Their lake. The place where they had first laughed together. Where he had spilled coffee on her sweater. Where she had forgiven him for everything before she even knew what mistakes were. It felt impossible, surreal, like time had folded in on itself. She didn't hesitate. She grabbed her jacket, locked the house, and drove toward the lake, every street she passed bringing back memories of him. Parking near the familiar trail, she stepped out into the crisp evening air. The sky was a swirl of oranges and purples from the setting sun, and the water reflected every shade perfectly. And there he was, Daniel, standing at the edge of the water, looking older than she remembered, a little thinner, with lines on his face that hadn't been there before. His eyes found hers immediately. There was hope, relief, and regret shining in them all at once. "Alina." His voice was soft, strained with emotion. She walked toward him slowly, feeling her heart race. "Daniel," she said, barely above a whisper. He stepped forward, and for a moment they were both silent. Words felt impossible. 3 years of absence, of longing, of unanswered questions. It left an invisible gap between them. "I'm sorry," Daniel finally said. "For everything. For disappearing. For not trusting you to handle the truth." Lena nodded, feeling tears prick her eyes. She had imagined this reunion so many times, and yet, standing here now, it was different. The reality was heavier, more complicated, but also strangely relieving. "You didn't want me to see you suffer," she said quietly. "I understand that. But it hurt. Not knowing." Daniel's shoulders slumped. "I know. I thought I was protecting you, but I only caused more pain. I never stopped thinking about you, Elena. Every day I hoped you would forgive me. That maybe someday—" His voice broke. Elena took a deep breath. "I waited for you," she admitted. 3 years. I wanted you to come back. I dreamed of this moment." His eyes softened, glistening. "And you waited, without giving up." They stood by the lake for hours, talking quietly. Not about the years they had lost in anger or blame, but about the closure, the understanding, forgiveness that had been missing for so long. Alina realized that the hurt hadn't disappeared, but it had transformed into wisdom, into acceptance, into peace. Finally, she looked at him and said softly, "But waiting changed me, Daniel. I'm not the same person who stood by this porch 3 years ago." Daniel nodded slowly, understanding. "I see that now. You've grown. You're stronger. You deserve happiness, even if it's not with me." A soft wind moved across the lake. The water rippled gently, reflecting the last light of the sunset. For a long moment, they just stood together, sharing the silence that only two people who had loved and lost could share. Alina finally turned away from the lake. Her chest felt lighter and her mind clearer. She had said what needed to be said, and so had Daniel. There were no promises now, only understanding. She had closure, and that was enough. Driving back home, she felt a strange sense of anticipation mixed with calm. Her life had begun again, not in the way she had expected, but in a way that felt alive. When she pulled into her driveway, she noticed the porch light. It was on. Marcus stood there, a small smile on his face, hands in his pockets, looking a little nervous. "I know this might seem sudden," he said, "but I realized something today. I'd regret it forever if I didn't tell you. You mean a lot to me." Lena's heart lifted. The porch light, once a symbol of waiting, now glowed for something entirely new. Possibility. A future not tied to the past, not tied to loss, but open, bright, and real. She stepped forward, reached for Marcus's hand, and felt a warmth she hadn't felt in years. For the first time since Daniel had disappeared. She felt completely ready to move forward. The past had left its mark, but it no longer controlled her. The future was hers to choose. The porch light shone softly above, not as a beacon for someone lost, but as a symbol of new beginnings, hope, and the courage to love again. Alina smiled. The night was calm, the air cool and fresh. And for the first time in 3 long years, she felt fully alive. The darkness of waiting was over. The light she chose now belonged to her. She squeezed Marcus's hand gently, feeling a sense of peace wash over her. Life had given her a second chance at love, not the one she had lost, but the one she was ready to embrace. And as they stood together on the porch, Alina realized something important. Sometimes the bravest act of love is not holding on, but learning to let go and allowing life to surprise you when you least expect it. The night stretched on, quiet and gentle, and for the first time in years, Alina didn't feel the weight of absence. She felt hope, she felt joy, and she felt ready for whatever came next. 3 years of waiting had ended, and now a new story had begun.